is discharged from hospital, stressing that the knife attack has only strengthened the two countries' unbreakable bond. German Chancellor Angela Merkel on a trip to Japan once again calls on the Japanese government to come to terms with the country's dark past if it wants to rebuild ties with its neighbours. Plus, 10 people are killed in a helicopter crash in Argentina during filming for a reality television show. Daybreak begins now.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, March 11th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom, and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, US Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert is settling back into his day-to-day activities after he was discharged from hospital on Tuesday, 5 days after a shocking knife attack. The US envoy said the experience, while terrifying, would not affect his approachable style to diplomacy. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Scarred but with a huge smile on his face, Ambassador Lippert thanked the South Korean public for their support following last week's brutal knife attack. Speaking to reporters before leaving the hospital on Tuesday, the U.S. envoy said in Korean that the incident will only strengthen ties between Seoul and Washington.
Beyond 돼 땅이 굳어진다.
Ambassador Lippert, who was attacked by a man wielding a knife at a breakfast meeting in central Seoul last week, needed 80 stitches on his right cheek and left arm. The stitches on his face have been removed, but doctors will be visiting his home every day to check on his arm until he is fully recovered. All things considered, the envoy says he feels pretty darn good.
I mean, it was obviously a scary incident, but I'm walking, talking, holding my baby, hugging my wife. So I just feel really good.
But he did hint at a possible change in the security procedures, as many blamed lax security for his injuries. At the time of the attack, the ambassador only had one full-time South Korean bodyguard with him.
But obviously, as people and the State Department in Washington have said, we're going to take a hard look at our techniques, procedures here, and I'll leave it to the security experts to come up with recommendations and policies going forward.
The ambassador, with a mix of Korean words, asked the South Korean public to treat him as they had done before the incident, as the guy next door and Sejun's dad.
I will still be a 동네 아저씨 and Sejuni Appa, as people here in Korea have called me.
Despite the appalling incident, Ambassador Lippert said that he wants to return to the job as soon as possible to advance the alliance between their two countries, adding that there will be no changes to their economic, political, and military cooperation. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea plans to impose sanctions on any company that complies with North Korea's recent unilateral wage hike at the inter-Korean factory complex in Kaesong. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the government plans to outline the possible legal and administrative punishments if they hike wages in March. This follows Pyongyang's decision to up the monthly salary of North Korean workers at the complex by 5% to $74. The ministry says that if the measure is implemented, North Korea would earn almost $500,000 in additional revenue from the complex. Seoul says it wants to hold talks with the North on the matter, but the call has so far gone unanswered. Senior officials from South Korea, China and Japan will meet this morning in Seoul to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting set for later this month. Korean officials say today's meeting will focus on ways to boost three-way cooperation and add that the issues discussed will also be on the agenda at the upcoming higher-level talks. Now, one of the key issues is to gauge the possibility of a trilateral summit a little further down the road. Korea and Japan both see the need for a leaders' summit despite the numerous historical and territorial disputes among the three countries. China is less keen and is advising a more cautious approach. The trilateral foreign ministers meeting has been stalled since 2012 after Japan nationalized its Senkaku islands known as Diaoyu in China. Japan and China each claim ownership of the East China Sea islands. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, on a visit to Japan, has once again urged the country to address its wartime past, and stress the importance of reconciliation with its neighbours. Merkel's latest remarks add to the mounting international pressure on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to offer a full and frank apology during his highly anticipated statement on this issue. Now, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
During the second day of her two-day visit to Japan, German Chancellor Angela Merkel reportedly advised Japan to properly address the issue of the forced sexual enslavement of Asian women during World War II. Japan-based Kyodo News reports that Merkel emphasized the importance of reconciliation between Japan and Korea during her meeting with the leader of Japan's opposition Democratic Party, Kazuya Okada. Merkel added that it's important to face the problems of the past in response to Okada's concerns about a lack of reconciliation with Japan's neighboring countries, mainly Korea and China. A day before, she had urged Japan to face its wartime atrocities, referring to Germany's reconciliatory efforts after World War II. Merkel's latest remarks have been seen as a call for change and the lukewarm attitude currently taken by the administration of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe toward acknowledging Japan's wartime atrocities. And she's not the only one pressuring Japan to offer an apology. Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson Do Gang-il said on Tuesday that the country expects Japan to build trust with its neighbors by making courageous efforts to face up to its history, just as Germany did after World War II. Also, U.S. Representative Mike Honda has said that Abe should not be allowed to appear before the U.S. Congress without repenting for the country's wartime history. In February, Abe had conveyed his wish to address Congress, and if he does, he will become the first Japanese prime minister to do so. Prime Minister Abe is set to issue a statement in August to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, but there's speculation that he'll try to water down Japan's wartime atrocities. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, the official who first pushed for Korea's recently passed anti-corruption bill says she doesn't think it's unconstitutional to include private school teachers and journalists as subjects in the bill. At a press conference on Tuesday, Kim Young-ran, the former chair of the Anticorruption and Civil Rights Commission, said a survey has found nearly 70% of Koreans think it's advisable to add the two groups. Stressing the bill does not violate the right to equality, Kim said there was a need for measures to protect the freedom of the press. The bill states that public servants, members of the media, and private school and kindergarten teachers will face criminal punishment if they or their spouses are found to have accepted $900 or more in money or gifts or special treatment from a person unrelated to their work. Korea's finance ministry says the country's recovery momentum is not strong enough, pointing to the need for more stimulus measures, with the government pledging to pour billions of dollars into the economy in the first half of this year. All eyes are on whether the central bank will do its part and cut the key rate on Thursday. Hwang Ji-ae reports.
Korea's major economic indicators were all down this year. Output, consumption, and exports all plunged, while consumer prices would also have marked a drop if it were not for a tobacco price hike. The finance ministry is expressing concerns, saying the country's recovery momentum is still weak. It adds that lingering uncertainties abroad, like a weak Japanese yen and a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve, also pose a threat to the domestic economy. To prop up growth, the government has announced a $9 billion stimulus package for the first half of this year and called on the corporate sector to raise their wage levels, which will in turn boost domestic demand. Given the efforts made by the government, market expectations are mounting for the central bank to cut its key rate in the coming months.
There's a high possibility that the Bank of Korea will cut the rate in April as it revises down its growth outlook for the Korean economy.
The Bank of Korea will set its key rate for this month on Thursday. Attention is now focused on the central bank's next move as the prospect of another rate cut also prompts concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
More and more bank branches are closing around Korea as customers are increasingly choosing to do their day-to-day banking online or on their smart devices. The Bank of Korea says the number of bank branches fell to a 5-year low of just over 7,400 last year. That means around 270 branches closed over that 12-month period. In comparison, the number of people who have signed up for smartphone banking last year surpassed 48.2 million. That's up 30% from the previous year. Now it's here at last, the highly anticipated Apple Watch. Apple unveiled it this week at an event in San Francisco, making it the first new category to be introduced under CEO Tim Cook. Our Ji Myung-gil has more on the watch and what it means for the wearables market.
It's been 5 years since Apple launched the iPad, and now the company is making a major play for the wearables market with this Apple Watch. The watch comes in 3 different models: the Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Sport, and the high-end Apple Watch Edition. The watch has many integrated features such as the Apple Pay mobile wallet, messaging, calls, health tracking applications, and the ability to connect your watch to a friend's watch. Pre-orders for the watch start April 10th and it will go on sale on April 24th. It will first be available in the US, Australia, China, and Japan, among other countries.
The Apple Watch is the most advanced timepiece ever created.
Apple enters a market already crowded by major tech companies, ranging from Korea's Samsung and LG to China's Huawei and startups such as Pebble. And with the smartwatch market expected to take off this year with projected sales of 28 million units from last year's 4.6 million, mobile manufacturers are pouring their efforts into making their smartwatches better and more visually appealing. Samsung, which had attempted to steal Apple's thunder with the release of its Galaxy Gear in 2013, is planning to release a new smartwatch during the first half of the year. LG surprised many with its Urbane smartwatch, which has the ability to make and receive phone calls without the need for a connected smartphone. Apple requires a connection to an iPhone to be fully operational. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, Korean classical music, known as gugak, has a history that dates back over 1,000 years. The natural sound of gugak is prized, but there's a secret behind how that sound is achieved in modern theatres. Im Yoon-hee has the details.
Gugak stems from a long, rich history and has maintained Korea's cultural heritage through time. There are various genres of music within gugak, linked together by the use of traditional Korean instruments. There are no microphones on this stage or speakers to project the sounds, yet every plek of the kayagum and boom of the puk is crisp and clear to the audience members who are listening.
They don't use a mic, but you can still hear the individual sounds of each instrument, which is really special.
The set pieces on a gugak stage are typically centered, and there's a traditional folding screen placed center stage to amplify the sounds of the instruments. The material of the folding screen plays a role as well, preventing any unwanted sounds from reaching the audience. Meanwhile, the instruments used in gugak have a significantly shorter reverberation time of only 1.2 seconds at most, as compared to classical instruments with much longer reverberation times. To compensate, the stage is designed and arranged to create the ideal setting for the instruments.
With kugak instruments, the reverberations are short, so if it's played in a hall made for long reverberations, the sounds are dulled and jumbled. Instruments with reverberations that are shorter than classical instruments need a different setting for the optimal sound.
The National Kugak Center holds regular performances to preserve Korea's traditions and lead the music of kugak into the future. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Wednesday morning from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The French are mourning another tragic loss of life, and among them 3 French sporting stars. French prosecutors have opened a manslaughter investigation after 2 helicopters collided into each other during a filming of a French TV survival show, Dropped. 10 people on board, including 8 French nationals and 2 Argentine pilots, were all confirmed killed. Among the dead were 3-time Olympic medaling swimmer Camille Muffat, famed boxer Alexis Vatin, and veteran sailor Florence Arthaud. French President François Hollande called the event a cause of immense sadness and said the 3 athletes had died trying to again push back the frontiers. The reality show Dropped flies celebrities into tough terrain where they try to survive in their search for food and shelter. Argentine authorities say Monday's accident occurred near the Andes Mountains amid good weather. The UK Parliament has opened a probe in their attempt to understand how 3 British schoolgirls, seemingly normal teenagers, slipped under the noses of authorities and their families to run to Syria to join the Islamic State group. Chiefs of the UK Metropolitan Police Force were there defending its actions before the Home Affairs Committee. Head of the Metropolitan Police's counter-terrorism unit, Mark Rowley, explained there was no proof to show the 15 and 16-year-olds were involved in terrorism. Shocked family members, while expressing their disappointment in authorities, explained the girls as being into normal teen things like watching the reality TV show Keeping Up with the Kardashians. This as an escaped French hostage of the IS group, Nicolas Henin, recently told the BBC that he observed many of his captors as being fragile people who started out with a genuine desire to help victims in Syria, but who were pushed to commit crimes once they arrived. He said he saw flickers of doubt and a lot of bad faith to justify their actions in his 10 months of captivity. And finally, the fast food chain Burger King has dropped sugary sodas from their kids' menu in the U.S., following similar moves by their competitors McDonald's and Wendy's. In a statement to USA Today, it explained its quiet move last month as being a part of the company's ongoing effort to offer guests options that match lifestyle needs. Instead of pop, milk or apple juice will be featured as options for younger patrons. The move could have a big impact on the beverage industry, as many Americans began drinking soda when they were kids.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with some Asian Cup news. Now, earlier this year, Korea came oh so close to winning their first Asian Cup title in 55 years in Australia, but unfortunately settled with a second place finish. And now they can look forward to the 2019 Asian Cup, which will take place in the UAE. Now, with an AFC meeting taking place in Bahrain, the UAE beat out Iran for the hosting rights to the 2019 Asian Cup. And it'll be an exciting one, as the tournament will include 24 Asian nations compared to the 16 nations in the 2015 Asian Cup. Meanwhile, the last time the UAE hosted the Asian Cup was back in 1996 when Korea was eliminated against Iran in the quarterfinals 6-2. Now, South Korean striker PACquiao was at one point the star who was supposed to lead the national team to glory. Well, that unfortunately never happened, and he even struggled to find playing time with several clubs during the past several years. And now he's coming back home. Now, FC Seoul, who is actually in need of a striker at the moment, announced that they have signed PACquiao to a 3-year deal, which will make him one of the highest, if not the highest paid K-leaguer in the league. And while FC Seoul planned to utilize him right away, turns out his contract with Al-Shabaab in Saudi Arabia has not expired and would have to wait for the transfer to go through. Now, PACquiao made his professional debut with FC Seoul back in 2005 and scored 33 goals for the K-League side. Now, two-time Olympic speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa might have ended her season early, but it's not stopping her from preparing for her next season. In fact, she's planning to create a dream team, not in Korea, but overseas. Now, according to her agency, Lee Sang-hwa, who's currently without a team, will form what they're calling the Dream Team, which will consist of a foreign coach and players of other nationalities in time for the 2015-2016 season. Now, currently, they're looking into the U.S., Canada, and the Netherlands as a possible destination. Now, she's set to finalize her dream team and continue her pursuit of a third gold medal at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. Now, with the Changwon LG Sakers up 1-0 against the Goyang Orions in the best-of-5 KBL Playoffs Series, they try to make it 2-0 on Tuesday as Game 2 tipped off at the Changwon Gymnasium. Of course, going into the game here, Orions off to a great start, taking a 24-17 lead before LG rallies back in the second quarter to take a slim 38-37 lead. Now, LG, led by Devon Jefferson's near triple-double, take a 4-point lead going into the fourth quarter, but a monster game by Orion's Troy Gillenwater and his 37 points, 9 boards, get the Orions rallying back late in the game to get a crucial away victory, 76-72 to level the series at 1 apiece. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports news.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-yeon here with your latest weather updates. It was so cold yesterday. Sensory temperatures remained below 0 throughout the day here in Seoul, and those winds were brutal. Well, all the cold wave advisory has been lifted for the day, and the readings should be a tad higher today. But it's still a way cold morning for a second week of March. It feels like below -5 for the most parts of the peninsula, so be sure to wear that thick jacket again on your way out. Though the skies will remain clear just like yesterday, but now dry weather advisory has been issued across the much of the country, including here in Seoul, so drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the daily low here in Seoul is kicking off at -4, and later on will peak at 5, and that's about 5 degrees higher than yesterday. And Daegu and Busan should enjoy a bit milder readings, topping out at 11, and Gwangju will top out at 10 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon both should see a high of 8 later on. Dokdo tops out at 3, but Man, Gyeongbuk remains quite chilly, only peaking at -7 later on. While snow flurries can be seen in the metro area before 9 a.m. this morning, but the chances are slim. That's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that just about does it for us. Just a friendly reminder, as Jian mentioned during the weather, it is still extremely cold, even though it is the middle of March, so you have to wrap up pretty warm if you're going outside. The sky might look sunny, it might look quite mild, but it really is very cold. And in regards to how you can watch all the news on Arirang, you don't just have to watch us on TV. You can go to our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news. And we also have a smartphone application, which you can watch live streaming of all our programming and also look back at all the VODs of all our news broadcasts. And one of my favorite shows, Korea Today, is coming up at the top of the hour, 7 a.m. Korea time, roughly 35 minutes from now. Have a wonderful day. And do stay tuned to Arirang, however you can, by phone, internet or TV. Goodbye.